Crystal Tower information, Whiskey 21530 Zulu, wind 060 at 5.
076 Mike Juliet, this is departure radar contact.
Hazardous weather information from Minnesota available on flight service frequency.
You've dialed in the Flying Midwest podcast, connecting aviators from across America's heartland, sharing news, information, and events from around the region.
Calling Nancy 53 on Overtime, Roger, turn left heading 070, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Sit back, relax, and join our crew for some hangar talk as we discuss a wide variety of regional aviation topics.
Archer 71143, flying flag, runway 280 left, quick takeoff, left hand southbound.
And now, from our home at the Anoka County Blaine Airport, our checklist is complete, and we're ready for departure for another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Contact departure, have your flight.
Welcome, everybody, to the Flying Midwest podcast. I am one of your hosts, Andrew, known around here as the Badger Pilot. Maddie has the night off, so I'm joined just by Jim. Hey, Jim.
Just by Jim?
Soon as I said just Jim, I knew I was going to regret it.
I'm going to give him a rash of grief over this. Hello, Badger, and everyone else. How are you?
They're all good. They just told me.
Oh, they're all good. I was asking you how you are.
Oh, I'm good.
Oh,
I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, I've had admittedly some medical stuff going on, and I've been a little under the weather and not really frankly in the mood or in the health to spend much time dedicated to podcasting. I've been kind of focusing some time on myself to get a little bit back to health and be able to come back a little bit more full strength with the podcasting. So, it's been a tough couple weeks, but we're doing all right.
Well, you look good and you sound great. So,
oh, thanks. It's this microphone. It really makes me sound great when I'm really miserable.
Perfect.
Nothing but the fanciest of microphones in that case.
Right.
I'm not going to spill what this news is, but I'm going to say that everyone should stay tuned for our next episodes because Maddie's going to have some really awesome news. I'm super excited for her to share it, and I'm not going to give it away for her. This is going to be her moment. So we'll leave that as it is.
Yeah, but it's exciting.
It is. I'm so excited for her. So now we've put her in a spot that she has to say something.
Yep.
When she's back. What have you been up to? I've seen some of your YouTube videos you're putting out. They've been pretty good. As far as you had the one with the engine trouble. That was
Yeah. I talked about that flight, I think, in a couple of previous episodes, but
you did.
Yeah, the full length video of my engine trouble, which went undiagnosed and unreplicated, is out. And so that's there for the FAA to review someday when I have more issues.
I remember that one time.
Yeah.
The FAA remembers.
Right. So that's out there. I've been flying a little bit more now that the weather's finally cooperating. I had some changes with my schedule at work. I now work at the same time that most of the rest of the world does instead of at night. So the adjustment to that, getting home from work and being tired, evening flights are usually canceled due to fatigue. And the weather hasn't been so great too. But I got up this week and took one of my buddies, and he's a coworker of mine too. He's never been in a small plane before, and I did the takeoffs and landings, and he flew us to and from dinner, and quite frankly did a better job than a lot of experienced pilots that I know.
Were you going to say better job than you, and you just figured you'd say
better than me for sure? No, there's no doubt about it.
You said he's not a pilot?
He is not a pilot. He has lots of time in the back of military helicopters, but he's never been in a small airplane before.
Gotcha. It's all of that observing. Did he say anything like I fly Microsoft Flight Simulator? I got this figured out.
He did mention that. I will say, as great as he flew, it inspired me, and I actually had two of my better landings in recent memory. So got to brag about that a little bit too.
Of course you do. That's what we do when we have a good landing.
Anytime you can have a buttery smooth landing and somebody's there to actually witness it.
Yes.
Shout out to Ben from the Midlife Pilot podcast, who says he can never land a plane properly when somebody's there to watch.
Now, does he mean in the plane with him or like on the ground watching? Because technically,
I think in the plane, but
Okay. There could be all kinds of people watching outside the plane that you don't even know about.
that's true.
That sounds like a really good excuse for all my poor landings. It's because someone outside was watching me and I botched this landing, not because I'm a crappy pilot. I wouldn't say crappy. I'm the world's okayest pilot.
Any word on your engine overhaul? How's that going? Has it started yet?
It's slow going. No huge surprises on some of the parts that, that we can kind of refurbish and reuse and all that stuff. No real issues there. So that's kind of a nice surprise. There are parts that can still go back in there that just have to be kind of refurbished is not the right word, but that's what I'm going to use. Rejuvenated. Yes. I love that word. So we'll get those up to speed. I'm not going to pretend to know which parts those are. I'm not a mechanic. That's why we have a mechanic to do this stuff for us.
Fair enough.
But the other thing we're doing right now too is while we're waiting for some of these parts to get done and waiting for the cylinders to get all sorted out, he's pulled some of the panels out and all the inspection panels, I should say. And he started working on the annual. So we'll have a fresh annual and a fresh fancy engine when all is said and done. But I still think it's going to be a few months, probably into the summer at some point. But in the meantime, I rejoined the flying club that I was in. I did that a while ago. I just haven't been super active over there. With the recent being under the weather and all that, I haven't really flown much in the last few weeks. So,
But you've been putting out videos too.
I have, yeah.
Saw one about the USS Langley, was it?
Yes, that's a cool story.
Yeah, it was.
Knowing now that the first aircraft carrier came from a coal boat that they decided to throw a flight deck on and let's see what happens and see if this crazy experiment works of having a dedicated aircraft carrier. So, yeah, that's those. I'll be honest with you. Making those videos has been a lot of fun just in the space of, yes, I enjoy the production aspect of it, but I'm really enjoying like learning about various aspects of history with aviation. And that isn't where I designed the channel to go when I created it. I wanted it to be more flying videos. I wanted it to be more like exploring like those types of things in aviation, but actually like flying there, right? But I've found that it's pretty easy to do some of that research on things that I'm interested in anyways. And then to make a script and a video on it, it's not overly complicated, and I can throw in that other stuff later. So I'll keep working this week in aviation history thing for as long as I'm still enjoying it, and then kind of see where it goes. I have no grand expectations. I'm just having fun.
Sounds good. Well, I'm enjoying watching them.
Oh, thank you. And I enjoy yours.
Thanks.
There, we're enjoying each other's videos, and I hope that our listeners step away from their podcast players and watch some of our videos.
Yeah. Put it on repeat.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. The algorithm and I appreciate it. Funny.
Well, since we've been so busy, we haven't really had time to gather some news and events, but our next episode, news and events, will be back in a very big way. And
it's most of the episode, actually.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of things coming up, a lot of events, a lot of news happening. So
yes, there is.
Yep. So that's what we have to look forward to in the future. But what do we have for today?
I'm really glad that you asked. The Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame is an organization in the state of Minnesota. A lot of states have these Hall of Fames, but they recognize various people who have contributed to aviation in a positive way within the state of Minnesota, specifically here. They have their induction ceremony for the 2025 class of inductees coming up in a couple weeks. So we talked with their current president, Brandon, about the hall, about the inductees and their process, and just what that organization is about and how you can get involved if that's something you're interested in. So I think without further ado, we should toss it over to our interview with Brandon.
First off, I just want to say thanks for letting Hall of Fame be part of this. We're trying to kind of expand our nets, a little bit wider in the media. So slowly but surely we're getting there. Yeah,
absolutely. We're glad to have you guys. Especially, I wanted to make sure we try to get an opportunity to have you on before your big event coming up too, just to kind of help highlight it a little bit. So
appreciate that.
All right, Brandon. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. We're going to start you off the same way we start all of our guests with our Fast 5 questions. It's our little bit of an icebreaker. no pressure. There's nothing crazy in our questions or any gotcha moments or anything. So to start us off here, favorite airport, if you have one.
Favorite airport? Wow. The only reason I say this is because they have an awesome breakfast burrito. Is in Pecos, Texas. There's this little airfield that I stopped at for a cross country. We showed up there. They had fresh, hot breakfast burritos and coffee waiting for us. It was great.
I think food's a great reason to have a favorite airport.
Right.
All right, next question. Favorite aviation film character?
Ooh. Ugh. Now there's so many to choose from. God. I should have prepped for that one. Like I said, there's so many. I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Blue Thunder? The main
I've
character.
heard of it. I don't think I've seen that one.
The main character in there, Murphy, Blue Thunder. He's just kind of very calm, cool, collective type guy. Yeah.
Nice. All right, question number 3. If you could own any plane, expenses are not an issue, what would it be?
A MH-60 Sierra Nighthawk. Sikorsky.
Interesting. I didn't expect a helicopter coming in the mix.
Well, I'm a rotary wing guy, so
Well, that would do it. Oh, funny. Question number 4. Do you have a least favorite aviation film?
least favorite. Oh, there's another one of those. There's a lot of them out there. I don't think I do. I think even some of the worst ones have some good aviation in it somewhere.
Fair enough. And our last Fast Five question for you. If you could meet anyone in aviation, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would like to say, being Minnesota aviation history, Charles Lindbergh, probably.
Oh, great answer. Great answer. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for playing along with our Fast Five questions. We're going to toss it into the main part of the interview now. And for that, Mr. Badger Pilot.
Thanks, Jim. So, Brandon, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and specifically your aviation background?
All right. Brandon Montanye, grew up in rural Minnesota, a little farm outside of a small town called Clarks Grove in southern Minnesota. Kind of really didn't get an interest into aviation until I was about 12 years old. I have an uncle who was an aviation photographer as a hobby. And I kind of saw those things. And then my dad was in the Navy. He didn't have anything to do with aviation, but he was in the Navy. I'm like, I think I might want to go in the Navy someday. But then in 1986, the movie Top Gun came out. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a fighter pilot in the United States Navy. So that's what spurred my aviation interest. So I had a mentor kind of growing up. He's a retired Navy captain. He was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, aboard the USS Maryland. Wow. When he commanded an LST, a landing ship tank, amphibious ship during World War II. And he kind of guided me through the process. Like, all right, if you want to be a pilot, be an aviator, you have to be a naval officer. In order to be a naval officer, you have to go through college. So let's prep you now in high school to get you into college. And then after you get your degree, you can go that route. So I did that. He kind of showed me around. Every time I went to San Diego to visit him, he'd show me around like Miramar and North Island and places like that. And then I went to college at Iowa State University, entered the ROTC program, but didn't finish the ROTC program. A whole deep story about that. And then ended up going to officer candidate school in Pensacola, Florida. So did a 90-day wonder. I was a 90-day wonder. What takes the Naval Academy guys 4 years to do, I did 90 days. So that joke.
That's the spirit.
Well, I originally wanted to be an aviator. And so when I went to the recruiter, the officer recruiter, I said, I want to be an aviator. He goes, all right. A couple weeks later, he's like, hey, guess what? We don't have any aviator slots left. Would you want to be a ship driver? I'm like, all right, I think I can be a ship driver. How hard could that be? So I go to OCS and I go to Surface Warfare Officer School in Rhode Island. Then I head out to Hawaii for a tour out there for 2 years. Found out that I can lateral transfer into the aviation community and become a pilot. So I get picked up for that. Surface Warfare community said, well, sorry, we're not going to release you to the aviation side. You got to do another tour. So actually, my first ship was an LST out of Pearl Harbor. And then my second tour was
No kidding.
my second. So three of my shipmates, we all put our transfer packages in together for aviation. Buddy of mine, Ken Robb, he was my state roommate, and then another friend of ours, Sharon Boyd. We all got picked up. Sharon became an NFO in EP3s. Ken got picked up for F-18s, and then I went on to eventually fly helicopters, but ended up having to do a second tour, went to flight school in Pensacola, and having been in the fleet, having met kind of all the personalities in the aviation world, I'm like, well, I don't know if fighter pilot's really my personality type. So I met a lot of helicopter guys. I'm like, yeah, they're kind of more like me. So when I got time to go to flight school, I'm like, I want to fly helicopters. So, and that's ended up what happening, where I ended up getting picked up to fly helos, flew the TH-57 Sea Ranger in advanced, and then got picked up for the MH-60 Sierra Nighthawk. At the time, was the brand new aircraft helicopter in the Navy, and then went to train there and did another additional 15 years in the military there. My last tour was as the Navy Rotor Wing operational test director out of Pax River, Maryland, on a VX-1. So that's kind of that. And then retired, came back here to Minnesota because I'm from here and my wife is from here. And I went to a Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame meeting one day, and 2 years later, I'm the chairman of the board. And how that happened, I have no idea. But so that's kind of the compressed version. That's the compressed version.
Well, thank you for your service. We certainly appreciate that. And that's a big deal to give that much of your life to the military and service to our country. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So from your aviation background, you talk about how you end up getting involved with the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame. Tell us a bit about the Hall of Fame, like when it started, some of the general history of it. For those who might not be familiar.
Well, it started with a very small group of people back in around 1988 with the Minnesota. They call it now the Minnesota Department of Transportation Aeronautics. Minnesota used to have its own aeronautics office dedicated to airports within the state. And it's still dedicated to airports of the state and taking care of those. But there was a group there that said, hey, we want to start a Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame. And they wanted it to be a museum. And over the years, they kind of decided, well, a museum's too much for the small group to maintain and all this. So they ended up starting the organization. And the organization is really just to highlight in catalog, really, we have a pretty extensive archives of information on not necessarily Hall of Fame inductees, but anyone who's been in aviation in Minnesota, including any programs we've had here as far as, military, civilian. There's a lot of aviation history in Minnesota that I didn't even know about until I started. And even then, I'm still fascinated what I learned when I go through our archives. So that happened about 88. And then eventually the group got together and said, hey, let's have inductees. We'll have a little ceremony. And it was pretty, it wasn't very glamorous. They all got together in a room pretty much and said, hey, congratulations, Bob. You're our new inductee this year. And you met the criteria that we have. And they used to have their ceremonies every year at the old Thunderbird Hotel, if you know where that's at.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be, I should say. And then it kind of started there. In about 2016, we had a new banquet coordinator, and Sherry Rolfing, outstanding job that she does. And it's just picked up, and it's only gotten bigger every year after that. So. But our main,
you mentioned Bob
focus,
as
our main focus is just to highlight Minnesota aviation and make sure that everyone knows, hey, we've got some outstanding people here throughout history and currently. I mean, we've got everything from astronauts to, Charles Lindbergh. So,
yeah.
You mentioned Bob as your hypothetical nominee and inductee.
Oh, right.
What kind of traits does Bob need to have, or what are you looking for somebody to be a possible inductee?
Well, we have a criteria. We have a metric that we measure that. And usually, I mean, to generalize it, it's you have to either be from Minnesota and done great things in aviation, or not from Minnesota, but done great things in aviation here in the state of Minnesota. So, we get I'll get an email just every once in a while. Hey, Grandpa flew 25 missions during World War II in Europe. He should be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, that's great. But it is. but what else outside of that has he done for aviation in Minnesota? Has he promoted it? Did he go on to be a flight instructor? Did he train other pilots? Did he, what else did he do outside of that? We get some outstanding, military record wise, some phenomenal people. And then you're like, that's great. He did that in the military and that was his job. But what did that do for Minnesota aviation?
Sure.
So did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. It's a very Midwestern. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. You betcha.
Yep.
Oh, I had a follow up to that, and then the you betchas got me lost. Oh, I remember it was. So, how many inductees have you had to the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame?
I think we're around 254 right now.
Okay.
We
And is there a certain number every year that get
Yes.
inducted, or is it
We
just
have,
kind of based on?
usually a minimum of 6, no more than 8 every year.
Okay.
And we can get anywhere from 30 to 50 applications every year. Someone nominates someone, and then we have a committee that does that selection, and we have that criteria. We have the metrics we do that by, then we get together, and sometimes there's some heavily debated ones, and then but last year was the first year I was on the committee, and it was it usually lines up. Everyone kind of agrees who should go into that.
Okay. So you kind of segued us into our next question here as far as the nomination process. You said you get, a good number of nominations every year. So how does that work? What is like the life of a nominations when someone sends a nomination into you guys, the metrics that you guys are looking at, and ultimately being selected for the hall?
Right. So if you go to our website, MAHOF.org, MAHOF.org, org, there's a place where you can nominate someone, and there's a form you fill out, and it just starts with someone saying, hey, I want this person to be nominated, and here's the reasons why. And then there has to be some type of a letter of support from others that they've either influenced or had that knows them somehow, some way. And then those all get collated into a package and kind of summarized, like, all right, these are the highlights. And we all read through all the support letters. There's a lot of reading involved with all the ones we get. And then it's kind of comes down to, okay, we have this guy or this person who did this and this person who did this. How do we rank them based on, and again, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but there's a criteria that you end up with a number. He's a 28 out of 30 on this. This person's a 27 out of 30. And then, if you have some people that are close, that's when the committee gets together and kind of debates, like, all right, well, he did this or she did that. So how do you break that person out from the other? And then from there, after they're ranked from 1 to how many ever we get. And it's usually the top 8. And then every year we have a pioneer, and the pioneer is someone who doesn't have anyone to represent them, someone that hasn't nominated them, but our archivist, it used to be the chairman, Noel Allard. He's usually the one who recommends that pioneer, and that pioneer doesn't have anyone to nominate them. So he does it. And then we actually have had a couple people that have nominated pioneers because they don't have any family in the area. They don't have, for this year, we had Nick Mamer. Nick Mamer has no living relatives. He died 1920s. So 1930. So he gets put in there and we vote on him as well, or people like that.
I think that part's really interesting that you got this pioneer member, and it sounds like it's just going through the archives and finding some remarkable people within the history of aviation in Minnesota.
It is. And Noel Allard, like I said, he was the prior chairman, one of our archivists and historian. He actually wrote a book on Minnesota aviation history. So up until 1947, I think is when it goes to, or 48.
Okay.
But he's kind of our expert on, hey, we need to look at this person because they haven't been nominated, and look what great things they did. So
yeah, I might need to figure out what that book is called.
I think it's called The History of Aviation in Minnesota by Noel Allard.
That's a great title.
Yeah. He also wrote a book, and I just found that I've known Noel for 8 years now, and I just found out that he wrote another book on Speed Holman, if you know who Speed Holman is. He wrote his biography.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then where was I at recently? they had a copy of his book on display. Oh, it was at the Wings of the North Museum. They have a copy of Noel's book.
Okay. And that museum's it's a Flying Cloud, right?
Right. It's at Eden Prairie Flying Cloud. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're currently in a small hangar, and they're waiting to expand. They're waiting to build a structure somewhere.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then it looks like for 2025, with all the nominations, you were able to whittle it down to 7 inductees this year. Can you tell us a little bit about those that are being inducted?
Yes, we well, our pioneer, like I said, was Nick Mamer. He's from Minnesota. His big claim to fame was kind of out of the flying a plane across the country doing midair refueling. Kind of a first time they've done that sort of thing. And plus he started Northwest Airlines, really got the route from Seattle to Minneapolis back and forth there. I got my notes here. I got to look at Clarence Kreutz. He was a World War II pilot in Europe. He flew B-26s in, I can't remember how many missions he flew. It was quite a bit. Out of North Africa and in Europe, got out of the military. He wanted to start a resort, fly-in resort. So he went up to northern Minnesota in the Arrowhead and started his own resort there. And it's a seaplane basin and a lot going on up there. So he kind of brought aviation up to northern Minnesota into the Arrowhead because there really wasn't a whole lot up there before that.
Nice.
Yeah, we got Robert Bob Cabana. He's from Minneapolis. Joined the Marine Corps, became an aviator. Well, actually, he was a bombardier navigator in A6s. Did some couple tours there. Transitioned to become an aviator, to become a pilot. Became a pilot. Went back to the Intruders, and then became a test pilot. Then NASA astronaut, and he took one of the initial space flights shuttle flights up to start the building of the space station, International Space Station.
That's cool.
And Amanda Lee, Lieutenant Commander Amanda Lee, still active duty. She was the first female demonstration pilot for the Blue Angels, and there was a 78-year career up to this point. So she was a fighter pilot. She started out going to the University of Minnesota Duluth. Didn't really like going to college, so she joined the Navy, enlisted, became a maintainer on F-18s. Went to what they call the Seaman to Admiral program. It's a program to get enlisted folks to go into the officer side.
Sure.
She went to Old Dominion University in Norfolk, received her degree there, then her commission. I went on a flight school, flying F-18s, operational tour, came back to be a flight instructor, and then after that, she got picked up for the Blues. So she just left the Blue Angels this last October, so she's back in an operational squadron flying. Doing that sort of thing. And so everywhere she went, even in all the publications, what they post about her is she's from Mounds View, Minnesota. So Mounds View, Minnesota is very popular.
Very cool.
Because of that. Mark Baker, I'm sure you're all familiar with Mr. Mark Baker.
I think I've heard that name before.
Yeah. So he's one of our inductees as well. Obviously, he's done great things with the AOPA. And everything within the general aviation community. He's done a lot there. So he's gonna be there. And and I found this out so he was CEO in the corporate world and a lot of executive in a lot of companies. And he would fly the corporate jet to wherever he had to go. Kind of like, hey, I'll take it. Kind of like taking the company car. Where's the corporate jet?
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible. I hope he took that all right.
Exactly. So, I'm really interested to talk to him, just to meet him and all the great stories that he has. Jim Goodall. I don't know if you're familiar with Jim or not. Kind of in Minnesota, he was part of the Aero Historians, and he pushed to get, there was a A-12, the first SR-71. When they retired him, he actually got one flown out on a C-5 to Minneapolis to put in the Air Guard Museum. And it was there.
I remember that being.
Yeah, it was there. And the CIA said, we want that for our museum. So they ended up taking it. And I know it upset a lot of people, but he's written 27 different books. on
Holy cow.
on the Skunk Works stuff. Skunk Works and the F-117, SR-71, U-2. And he's worked a lot with, he worked with the Seattle Museum of Flight, Air Force Museum of Wright-Patterson, and then the Pacific Aviation out in Pearl Harbor to acquire historic aircraft. So he's published 29 books. So
That's cool. I very distinctly remember going to that Air Guard Museum as a kid and seeing that bird there and thinking that thing was so cool. I guess I don't think is that museum even still operational anymore?
It not just, it closed about a year ago. The aircraft are still out there. Some of them are going to be moved up the new museum at Camp Ripley. There's a Minnesota Veterans and Military Museum up there. They're building a new complex there, and I can't remember if it's 5 or 6 are going to be moved up there.
Okay.
So they didn't have enough room to move all of them. So
that's too bad. There's a lot of really cool history in that museum.
There is. There's one thing I was amazed. So my son, who's 12, is getting interested in aviation, but he's more the airliner side of things. So they have a C-97 out there at that museum that has a restaurant. You can barely see this restaurant on the side. I was amazed to find out that it was somewhere out west. I think it was in Oregon. It was a restaurant. The restaurant closed down, and they literally got the aircraft flying again and flew it from there here in Minnesota.
So,
and
I didn't know that.
near the museum. Yeah, when I found that, I'm like, this is crazy.
That's incredible.
And Randy Korfman, he's kind of got a bit of a different background in that he's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what he does is on the aviation physiology side, and he is obviously he does the Great Minnesota Aviation Gathering every year for the Minnesota Pilots Association. So Randy's a great guy. He's one of our board members. He just came out as one of our board members. He is just a great guy to hang out with and talk to, and just so much experience. And then I think everyone's probably gotten their flight physical from him at some point. But
he runs the Minnesota Pilots Association now, doesn't he?
he does, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, they put on GMAG every year, and they've asked me to be a guest speaker for a portion of it and talk about Navy rotary wing. So that ought to be interesting.
Are you doing that this upcoming year then?
Yeah, May.
Okay. I'll have to come out there and check you out. It's always a fun event.
Yes, it's great. It's I would say outside of our event, it's probably one of the best ones in the state because kind of everyone gets together. What I love about our inductee banquet is that you have everybody from air traffic controllers to mechanics to airline pilots and military pilots, rotary wing. I mean, we've got crop dusters, just the whole gamut of aviation comes together. You know, the aviation family in Minnesota comes together that night at our banquet.
All right. So with mentioning the banquet, what can people expect this year for the event?
Well, the venue is the same as last year, right up Mystic Lake, out of their convention center or their conference center. And it starts with a social hour where we have about an hour and a half of people coming in, and we have the inductees. They're set up. They each have a table that they can set up anything they want to show the public, you know, their mementos through flight or anything like that. We have a silent auction that goes on too. A lot of people have donated stuff for the silent auction, and that's anything from kind of like flight experiences. You know, if people do rides, or we've had restaurants that donate dinners, or we've had, you know, the whole gamut of things. And then that social hour, so people can meet the inductees and just be social. And then once we start the ceremony, we usually we'll do a 3-minute video of the inductees and their biographies, which kind of just shows pictures of them throughout their life and then their biographies. They'll come up and receive their plaque. They get a plaque. The same plaques that are displayed. We actually do have a Hall of Fame. It's currently in the Club Jet hangar at Eden Prairie, the old home of Wings of the North, before they moved out.
Yeah.
But so Wings of the North is going to, once they get a new building, they've said that they're going to host us there to put our plaques up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome for them.
And then, so they come up and we they each get to give their speech, and yeah, it's a good time. And then afterwards is more of a social time. But Yeah, we're going to do this year. Well, we did it a couple years ago. We're going to do a plaque unveiling at Wings of the North again that same day on April 12th.
Okay.
At noon. Bob Cabana is going to be there. Amanda Lee's father and husband will be there. She's not going to be able to make it this year because she's got real world stuff going on. So, but we'll have representatives there. And we're hoping to get a couple more inductees. But again, it's trying to get everybody together at one place at one time. It takes a year to coordinate that alone.
Sure. Badger, you want to ask that question you just typed, or should we save that?
All right.
Go for it.
All right.
I'll be quiet.
All right. So then, is this an invite-only event? Is it open to the general public? If somebody wanted to go,
it's open to everybody. It's if you go to our website, MAHOF, MAHOF.org, and you can go in there for the banquet, and you can order your tickets online through Eventbrite, or you can, if you want to mail in a check, you can print out a form and mail in a check as well. So you've got those options there, and it's open to the public, whoever wants to go. And April 6th is a cutoff date for those sales. So anytime after April 6th.
Too bad, so sad.
Right, exactly.
Should have got ahead of it.
I'm looking at the menu right now. It looks really good.
No.
Should find your way to Minnesota.
I might have to.
Well, you're about a 6-hour drive from where you're at. So,
Only a couple-hour flight, though.
Well, there you go.
Well, put you.
Yeah. Land at, I think Flying Cloud's the closest airport. Landing in the prairie and just drive over to the Mystic Lake, which is about 15-minute drive. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
there you go.
So my question for you is, having the knowledge of like who all the inductees are over time, are there any for you that like stand out? It doesn't have to be just this year, but like any like inductee standouts for you personally?
Holy cow. I don't know. I mean, so I write the biographies, and the biographies are all put together based on the information we get, all, the letters of support, the initial, request for induction. And I have to compress a lifetime of great achievements for people into one page. And it is just extremely hard. And I don't know if I could pick one, just everyone. I don't think that we've never had anybody that I'm like, why are you here? It's, they're all great. I don't think I could pick one. We've got astronauts, we've got Kurt Brown last year. He was a shuttle commander, I want to say 6 times, but he flew up with John Glenn. So John Glenn was on one of his last flights up there. So you have stuff like that. And then he was a test pilot before that. And then we had Marty Knudsen, who was a couple of years ago. He was a U-2 pilot. I think he had the most flight hours in a U-2. Then he transitioned over to NASA and became an administrator there, and was responsible for them getting an SR-71. And he flew an SR-71. I think I want to say it was like the age of like 60. It was just
no kidding.
Yeah. So yeah, Marty Knudsen, it was pretty and he did a lot of stuff that we couldn't talk about because of the U-2, flying the U-2 and all the places he flew. So, yeah, we had another, he was a Navy Cross winner. I can't remember his name right now. He flew in World War II, and then he flew with, after the war, he was recruited by the Israeli government to start the Israeli Air Force. So he was naval aviator, World War II. He was at Midway, and then, went to Israel to help them start the Air Force. Yeah, I can't pick one.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of good candidates to pick from. So
right.
It's understandable you can't just pick one.
Well, I would say I would just encourage everyone to go to our website, because all of our inductees, all 254 of them, are online there to look at. And just eventually we are going to get everything digitized in our files eventually.
Okay.
That's
going to be a huge undertaking, I'd imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
And we're all volunteers, and we only have 2 archivists, myself and Mr. Noel Allard. So it's easier said than done, but hopefully we'll have things. If you want to research someone, all of what we have will be online for that.
So tell us a bit more about the archives themselves. Like, how do you guys maintain them now? Is it just like in just boxes and filing cabinets,
No,
or
it's-
like, how
it's
does
all-
that work for you guys?
It's all in filing cabinets.
Okay.
We have an office space at Eden Prairie. That's where our main office is. And then, it's really Noel Allard has established that collection over the years. And all of his research he's done for his book and all sorts of other things. So we don't have, a lot of people donate stuff to us, and we don't really, the only time we keep artifacts is if they're associated with an inductee. And even then, like Speed Holman, we were donated a grandfather clock that was one of the trophies from one of his races. Well, we have no way to display that or keep it. I mean, we can, but it would just takes up too much space. So we ended up transferring it over to the Northwest History Museum. So they have it in their archives now. But usually just our stuff is photographs and papers. And we do have some stuff, artifacts from some of our inductees. And then when people do donate them, we definitely try to find a good home for them. And here's for instance, we had a gentleman bring in a bunch of his dad was a retired naval aviator. His dad was the last executive officer of Naval Air Station Twin Cities. A lot of people don't know we had a naval air station here. And he comes in with all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, my dad liberated these certain pieces from a hut down in the South Pole, where he was down there in a historic hut. And it was a glass jar of salt, an ice pick, and a wooden track off of some type of vehicle. So I'm like, well, I don't know if Pensacola would want that or what. So anyway, we ended up getting a hold of a place in New Zealand that actually manages that historic hut in the South Pole. And we actually got it transferred back so it could be returned to that historic hut. And then there's other artifact pieces that people donate to us and like, well, we'll find a good home for it, usually in a museum, so it can be preserved. Obviously after we either scan it or photograph it or whatever, so we have record of it. But then,
very interesting. The other question I have about the archives themselves, like maybe you have an exact number, maybe you have an estimate. How many pieces do you think are like between documents and photographs? Like how big is your archives?
It's like I said, it's all paper and photographs, and we have 5 or 6 very large filing cabinets.
Okay.
With that, those big fireproof filing cabinets. With just that, then we have a few boxes of old logbooks and scrapbooks and things like that people have donated. So we easily 1 million pieces of paper.
Whew.
And they're all cataloged. They're all filed by person or subject. So we'll have people that will contact us and say, hey, my dad did this in Minnesota. Do you have a file on him? And we may or may not. And it may be as simple as, we may have just like a newspaper clipping of that person in a file, or we may have, two huge paper files on him.
Sure.
Hopefully, eventually we're going to get them digitized, so our archives will be online. So I'm a historian, both my bachelor's and my master's degree in history. So for researchers, I think it'll be a good place to go to get.
Yeah, no kidding.
Info, and they're I would say for the most part they're primary sources because they're newspaper clippings, they're original photographs, they're letters from those persons, people, or logbooks, or
very cool.
What kind of activities does the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame organize, or are there scholarship opportunities? What do you guys do as far as outreach to the public? Definitely
scholarship activities. If you go to our website, we have those listed. And we're part of our mission is also to promote aviation within Minnesota. Not only the history, but to promote aviation. And part of that is sending people to schools and that. And we do have, I think, 6 scholarships up right now. They kind of come and go. Some people will donate and say, hey, I want to do a scholarship in my grandfather's name, and they will do that. And with that, we have a committee that does that as well. So all of our scholarships that we have within the Hall of Fame are all selected by the Hall of Fame. So we don't have like, are we going to throw someone else's scholarship in with ours? No, they're all selected by us. And so this year we received one from Air Corps Aviation that was strictly for AMPs, for mechanics.
Okay.
So they're
They
going to
need.
continue that on for 26 and 26. I can't remember if we've published those names yet or not, but they'll be out there. And then a gentleman by the name of Steve Petrich, he donated money to have a scholarship in his name after he passed away. So we have, scholarships of that nature. And people just need to go on it. And that process again, it's on the website. We're walking you through the process. You have a letter that you have to fill out, like, hey, why do I want this money? Where am I going to go? And we definitely want to make sure that, and again, those go to people that are either going to school in Minnesota or are from Minnesota.
I love the scholarship opportunity idea too. Just the ability to keep expanding aviation, and especially in some of those areas where it's so like kind of hard up for people right now for like the AMPs. That's really cool.
Well, one of our interns, he is going to Mankato right now, and he told me he's just transitioned from the flying, and he wants to be aviation management. So he went into that field. But what he told me, what he was paying annually for room, board, books, tuition, and flight time was just crazy. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
I just had to sign 20 years of my life away to get my flight training. So
That's it. Oh, funny. Before we get to our kind of wrap up question, is there anything else that you want to cover that we haven't talked about that would be relevant or that we want to work into the episode?
People need to know that our organization is made up 100% of volunteers. Like, this is all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. And we're out there, and we do, we talked about outreach. I didn't mention this. We try to be at GMAG every year, Girls in Aviation, and then Wings of the North puts on their air show every year. And we try to, get out there and represent, show who we are. And I think we do a pretty good job for just volunteers. And there's only a small group, but if people want to get involved, we are more than welcome to take more people onto our board, or any type of aviation people want to get involved with us. Our board members are I'm in awe of the board. I mean, we have retired Northwest pilots. We have retired military pilots, kind of the mix of the two. We have just people that love aviation and never flown or done anything with that. So the opportunities are there if anyone wants to get involved with Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame.
So how would someone get involved with Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame?
Go to our website.
Set me up perfectly.
Go to our website and look on the board of directors, look at my name and shoot me an email, and you can show up to our next meeting. Well, show up to the banquet.
There you go. The banquet.
It's kind of just about showing up. That's kind of what happened with me. I showed up to a meeting and like, oh, great, you can help out with this. Okay. Showed up to another meeting. Hey, have you ever thought about maybe doing this? No. And I think
And the
the reason is right. Well, Noel Allard, our historian, he was our last chairman, and then he's a historian and archivist as well. So he's like, oh, well, you know how to archive. You're a historian. You'd be the perfect fit to take this job over. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because you've been doing this for 35 years, and I don't know if I could do that. And he's like, oh, yeah, you can. So here I am.
You got to pass the torch sometime, right?
Right. Big shoes to fill, though.
And now you're holding it, sir.
Right. He's forgotten more about aviation than I'll ever know, I think.
Well, doing that for 30 some years for sure.
Right. Well, and he's written a couple books too. So
Yep. Yeah.
I'm still working on mine.
All right, Sir Badger Pilot, you want to ask the last question here?
I think so. I think it's time. So, Brandon, we end every interview with the same question. What is your aviation unpopular opinion?
Rotary wing aviation is probably the best. It's underrated. A lot of people, helicopters don't get the glory they deserve. It's always the fixed wing, pointy nose guys that don't. So the unpopular opinion is that rotary wing pilots are the best.
Tell me you're a helicopter pilot without telling me you're a helicopter pilot.
I tell people that, like, so as all Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, we all start out fixed wing. We're all fixed wing qualified.
Yep.
And then, so they always joke that, well, it's the guys that get the lowest scores in flight school that go to fly helicopters. I say they pick the best guys to go fly helicopters. And not necessarily fighter jets, because the fighter guys get all the glory. But, and that's
unfortunately.
And that's kind of a side note, is everyone's like, oh yeah, jet fighters and flying, landing on carriers, and like, try landing on a small frigate in the middle of the North Atlantic in bad weather at night.
I was going to say.
No disrespect to my fixed wing brethren, but our life is pretty challenging as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's going to be pretty challenging with a rolling and moving deck, and then it's dark, and it's a small platform.
Oh yeah, it's like landing on a postage stamp.
Oh, geez.
It was fun though. I enjoyed it. I missed. That's kind of the challenge of it. Like at the end of the day, you're like, I just did that. That's pretty cool. So that'd be my unpopular opinion, I guess, is that rotary wing guys are the greatest of the aviators.
It's a great opinion. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. We really appreciate it, and we will make sure to get the word out about not just the hall, but the banquet that's coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much to Brandon for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast and telling us about the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame and giving us a little bit of insight into the 2025 Hall of Fame inductees.
I also really enjoyed talking about the other things that the hall does. Like, they've got these archives and all these materials. And I know we talked about that with the Wisconsin folks too, but I'm likely going to take him up on an offer to go check that out. I think that'd be really cool. I'm really interested to see what all they have in there. Especially, he's talked to us a bit about high altitude balloon work that happened in Minnesota and their history of aviation here. So I don't know. I'm on this aviation history kick. I'm really intrigued by their archives.
And I think we had a Flying Midwest podcast first. He's the first person to say their favorite aircraft was actually a helicopter.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with it at all. I just don't think we've had anybody that.
We haven't. No, people normally say like fighter jets, but his answer makes a lot of sense given his background with helicopters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of helicopters, just a quick shout out to listener in front of the show, Alyssa. She just had a helicopter discovery flight this week. And so I'm sure she'll be in the Discord telling us all about it and how exciting it is. And she texted me. She was like 100 feet over the water, just cruising the shoreline.
No kidding.
It sounds super fun. So maybe helicopters are cooler than we all think.
They might be. Alyssa will tell us for sure. I look forward to hearing more about that.
Yep.
So you kind of foreshadowed that we have some fun things in our next episode. How about you tell us all about the next episode of the Flying Midwest podcast?
So all of our episodes are always very fun.
They are.
But we have some very, very serious news and events coming up.
Super serious.
Super serious.
Surely you can't be serious.
Surely. I am, and don't call me Shirley. We'll be talking about some aviation superstitions. We'll talk about some aviation popular opinions and more just fun and shenanigans going on, as always.
There may also be some tomfoolery.
There might be.
I can't guarantee that that's out of the realm of possibilities. On that note, Sunday night, the 30th of March, we're going to do a live stream of our next episode for anyone who wants to come on there on our YouTube channel. So we've been talking for the last few live streams that these will be exclusive in the future to Discord and Patreon supporters, and that will be coming after this episode. This is going to be the last one that we'll do as an open to everyone live stream. After that, we'd love to have you in the Discord community. That is going to cost you $0.00 to be part of the Discord. Or if you do want to support us in more of a financial way to help us keep going, you can certainly join us over on Patreon as well. So that live stream, March 30th, 7:30 p.m. over on the YouTube channel. Links for that will be on all of our social medias as well.
And speaking of the Discord, the best way to join the conversation is to email us at flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com. and we'll send you a link to join. And while you're emailing us, you can submit ideas for merchandise, for new gear, give us ideas for show topics, and if you want to be a guest, let us know. We'll get you on.
Or if you want someone else to be a guest, let us know, and then you can make whatever arrangements you need to hold them hostage so that they'll talk to us.
Yes.
And finally, if you're enjoying what we're doing on the Flying Midwest podcast, it would be super of you if you'd leave us a rating of 5 stars only. I've heard from other podcasts that's the only button that works. So hit that 5-star rating for us. Leave us a review. We'd love to read some more reviews on the podcast. And as always, you can certainly leave us ideas for future episodes by shooting us an email at flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com, which is something you already said.
But it's worth repeating.
Oh, geez. Right.
Oh, hey, one more thing before we close it out, too. I think it's time, with the warm weather coming, to start planning for maybe our 2nd annual camping fly-in.
We 100% need to do that. Second annual.
Yep, I have a couple ideas of where we might go, but I'm still open to suggestions, so let us know in the Discord or by emailing us where you might want to see the fly-in. So, more details to come.
Yes, I'm excited. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, thanks so much, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. And until next time,
see ya!
See ya!
Flight Chef 536, contact Minneapolis Center 132.35. Good day.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.